right, this is Kent with Cleaver Farm and Home. Today we're going to talk about deer and deer management. With Purina today, we got Bud Meredith again, and then also we have Scott Hoinsey from Texas. He's the deer specialist out of Texas. Got a lot of knowledge and everything. And Scott, I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you take over.
Absolutely. Let's get started. Just go ahead and get the presentation up and we'll get going. And appreciate everybody joining today here. I know y'all all got a lot going on, so hopefully you spend some time with us here and learn a little bit about deer management.
Okay.
And what we're going to talk about today is, and you go ahead and go to the second slide, that video there, Cassie. But what we're going to talk a little bit today about is just developing a successful protein feeding program on your property. You know, everybody likes big deer. That's all why we're on the call here this afternoon. Everybody likes to see deer and grow big deer and all the above. So that's what we're going to focus on today, is just some tips and tricks, some things that I've learned over the years to hopefully help you and prevent you from making mistakes that are commonly made out there in the industry and get you further along down the road quicker. So let's go ahead to the next slide. You know, a lot of people will, ask, what's the benefits of actually doing a supplemental pellet program on your property? Well, obviously the number one thing is going to be the fact that you can raise bigger deer with bigger antlers. Of course, we all know that. But there's also things that a lot of people don't think about too, but just besides those bucks out there, and that is your does. It helps with proper doe nutrition on that property. It's going to help those fawns get off on the right foot. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But and also just, holding deer in an area. Once you get a supplemental feeding program established on your property, it will hold deer on that property except during the rut time of the year. And kind of on this slide here too, Cesar Clayberg has done a lot of deer research down in South Texas, and one of the articles they put out here a couple of years ago was the fact that, they came up with a 15% higher Boone and Crockett score on a property that was fed, a good pellet program. So it's really exciting times for us in regards to raising the biggest and the best deer we can out there. Next slide. One of the things I'm going to start off kind of with the elementary things on that deal is, and Cassie, can y'all put that screen, or maybe it's on my end? Yeah, I can put that screen down here in the bottom corner. Okay, sorry, I drug it down here. Kind of get started on a property that's never been exposed to pellets, where you just had a spin feeder and things like that. We're talking about starting a protein pellet program. We're talking about utilizing free choice feeders instead of spin feeders, where these deer can eat all they want, whenever they want, kind of deal, 24/7 buffet kind of deal. But when you get started with that kind of a program, you got to train those deer to eat those pellets. And how we do that is we go out there and we'll mix corn with these pellets 50-50 before we get started. I wouldn't put no more than about 100 to 200 pounds of that 50-50 mix in a protein feeder to begin with, because that's probably one of the worst things you can do is go to that property, get a new protein feeder out there and put 1,000 pounds of pellets in it, because those pellets are going to get old and dry out before those deer really get started on them. So we want to keep them as palatable as we can. And then we're going to gradually wean out that corn over time. That might take 30 days on some properties, and I've seen it take 6 months on property. It's all depending on what else those deer have to eat, how much they're using those protein stations. One thing that you can do to speed up the process, also to get them on protein pellets, is to place a spin feeder with corn next to that protein feeder, because they will go to that corn feeder. And the way that kind of works is they go to the corn feeder, then they go over to the protein feeder with that 50-50 mix of pellets in there. They stick their head in that tube and they realize, oh wow, there's food in here. And they start to eat those pellets, and then we gradually just take that corn out. So that's just one way to help them get started on pellets. Next. A lot of people always ask, well, how much feed am I going to feed on the property? Well, there's a lot of variables that can dictate that and determine that. And some of those things that you got to look at is the feeder type that you're using and the number of those protein feed stations on that property. Pen size, and what I mean by that, we'll talk about it in a minute, but if you got feral hogs, you're going to have to put hog panels around those feeders. I don't know if you guys have that problem up in Kansas or not, but it's pretty prevalent down here. Where those feeders are located and what other sources of nutrition are on that property, whether it's just a native browse and how well that is, or food plots, etc. So next slide. One of the things we're going to talk about today is just, this is kind of important here. I've been in the retail side of the wildlife business for a long time, before I came on board with Purina, and now obviously on the feed side. But back when we were in retail, we probably spent more time talking people out of things than what they did truly need. They thought they knew what they needed, but they really didn't know what they needed, kind of deal. And what I'm trying to say is, when you're out there selecting a feeder, like today, we're not here to promote any specific feeder, but what I will tell you is get a good quality feeder that's at least 1,000 pounds capacity. And some of you might be going, oh wow, 1,000 pounds. And be honest with you, my favorite is a 2,000 pound feeder, because you only have to buy that feeder one time and you're going to grow into that capacity over time. You start out with a 300 pound feeder, you're going to spend all your time driving to the property and filling it up, or in about a year or two from now, you're going to realize it's not large enough capacity and you're going to have to rebuy those feeders again. So there's something to think about right there. One thing that's also important, you can see on this slide, is the proper feed head of that feeder. I like the kind of feeders where the feed head comes all the way out past the legs, not the type of feeder that just has 4 little spouts nestled underneath the cone of the hopper. The reason for this is, like on that feeder right there in that picture, you can actually get 4 mature bucks around that feeder at one time. It is possible. And at least 2 or 3 of them during hard antler, no issues. So that's one thing. Another thing that I'm a big fan of is skids on these feeders, because you need to move these feeders around every year. Because over time, pellets fall on the ground, a lot of deer trampling underneath that feeder, and from a parasitic problem, you want to move those feeders around once a year. Move them over 10 or 20 yards from where they are today. And then also, if you have an area that has a lot of deer, don't be scared to go with the higher capacity, like a 3,000 pound, because at the end of the day, it's going to save you a lot of time on labor. Next slide. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, how many feeding stations do I need on this property? Well, there's a couple things you kind of have to balance out. One is, you want to aim for about 1 feeder to every 20 deer on your property. That's what our research has shown, that you can effectively feed about 20 deer in one night, where they all go through the pecking order and hierarchy to be able to eat as much as they want. Once you're trying to feed over 20 deer per feeder, you start getting into the issues of social structure and things like that, where some of these deer might not be able to get up to that feeder and eat during the night. The next thing is when you're looking, like, for example, you don't know how many deer you have, but you know how many acres you have, is to try to put a feeder to 1 to every 100 to 200 acres of low fence property. That's the kind of a rule of thumb if you don't know how many deer you actually have. One thing you don't ever want to do is ever hunt over these feeders. You never want to associate danger with the protein station. It's kind of like a sanctuary area where those bucks feel comfortable going up there anytime to eat, because if your bucks quit using it, then you're kind of taking a big step backwards on what your ranch goals are. The other thing is reducing stress is a big focus when it comes to protein stations. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second on pen size, but also just in the sheer number of protein stations on a property. Something you need to think about is, let's say, for example, you're going to go out there and put 2 protein stations on this property, but you're trying to feed 25 to 30 deer. You're better off putting 4 protein stations out there where there's not a lot of competition at those feeders. At the end of the day, you're probably going to feed the same amount of feed, but you're also going to allow those deer to walk over and eat anytime they want without having to worry about social structure and things like that. Because believe it or not, that is a big important thing, especially on our does as well as our bucks during all year long, even during antlered growth. Next slide. Here's our favorite friend If you're down, especially like in Texas, I don't know about Kansas up there, but we got a lot of these guys on these properties. So if you have one of these issues, you're going to have to put hog panels around those feeders. Next slide. And the proper way to do that is a couple things. One, you put those hog panels around in a 60-foot diameter, 60 feet across. It's going to allow plenty of room for interaction with those deer jumping in and out of that pin feeder site, and they can interact and do what deer do without getting kind of congested in there. And to get that 60 feet diameter, that's basically just 12 of the 16-foot hog panels in a circle. Another thing is build those panels in a circle. Hogs like to get in on a corner type system, kind of like hog traps are designed on corners, where if you have a circle, those hogs just continue just to walk around without getting in there. And another thing, lastly, is to keep that feeder in the middle of that protein station so those deer can interact without hitting those hog panels. But again, stress is important, and what I mean by that on this slide is basically a big, large hog panel area is going to reduce that amount of stress on those deer. I've seen properties where guys will put a protein station up and put 1 or 2 hog panels on each side, and the deer literally won't use them because they don't feel comfortable jumping into that small of a structure. Next slide. Here's an example of what not to do. This is a protein feeder that's got a very, very small circular diameter. I think here, it's hard to see on my phone, but if I remember, that's about 4 or 5 hog panels in a circle right there. Next slide. Protein feeder placement, where are we actually going to put these feeders out? And that's something that's very important too, to maximize your efficiency. Is number one, obviously you're going to look at the layout of your property, whether it's a rectangle or a square or long and skinny and those kind of things. But basically, even feeder distribution, and keep it off your fence lines, because we want to feed your deer, not the neighbor's deer kind of deal. But I would definitely put a protein station by your water sources and near cover and away from large openings. And what I mean by that is the next slide. Next slide. That leaves you guys. Oh, there we are. What I meant by that in that last slide was you got to think about how a buck thinks all year long, except during the rut. Basically, that buck is thinking about 3 things: water, food, and cover. So if you keep a protein station by water and cover, that deer basically has a lot of his needs met. He can go sleep in the shade all day, get up, get a drink of water, walk over and get some pellets and go back and lay down. You keep it really easy on that deer from having to travel long distances. So that's something to think about right there. Next slide. Cover, a lot of people plant food plots, and food plots are excellent on properties, and they're very comparable to a pellet feeding program. But a couple things on food plots that I'm going to encourage y'all is basically leave some edge effect in those food plots, where a deer doesn't have to walk across a large acre field. He can kind of walk a few yards and stand in some cover and continue to walk across a few yards and those kind of things. But also, never put your supplemental feeders out in a food plot. Deer just don't feel comfortable out in an open area during the day to go use that protein feeder. They want to use that protein feeder next to cover. So keep those feeders out of your food plots, but put them inside cover 100 to 200 yards before you get to the food plot. Next. One of the common questions I get asked is, should I go with bag or bulk? And what I mean by bulk is basically putting it in an overhead bin. But one of the things, the key thing to remember on this slide is you're going to save yourself a lot of time and money on labor by going bulk and putting it out with a feed wagon trailer versus doing sacks all the time at the property. But one thing you got to keep in mind is you don't want to purchase or put more feed in those feeders in that bin that you're going to use in 60 days. Next slide. And when you're out there looking at bins, if you decide to go the overhead route, I've seen a lot of mistakes made on this over the years. But when you buy that hopper, I'm a big fan of a 30-ton hopper. And let me tell you why. 30 tons is going to allow you to bring a full truckload of bins, a feed in. Let's say you're buying truckloads at 22 to 24 tons, and you can still have some extra capacity. But also those bins are rated on corn capacity, not on pellet capacity. And then also always put an overhead divider in those overhead hoppers. I mean, usually for $1,500, you can put the divider in there. And that allows you to bring in like whole corn and pellets in the same overhead facility. But also keep in mind, you want it near an all-weather access road where we can get in and fill that up, regardless if it rained or not. And it helps us get in there and get your feed to you. Next slide. Spend a little time now on, you've told y'all a few things of what you can do and tips and tricks to actually get the physical part of your property set up and get everything right to start your supplemental feeding program. Like right now, it's going to be springtime here before we know it, and you're going to be dropping sheds and growing antlers. I mean, we're already picking up sheds, so the process is started over. But there's really a couple things you need to think about, and it's really not that complicated. But during the spring and summer, you want to focus on antler growth and a lactation focus on those fawns and does. And then in the fall and winter, we want to focus on body conditioning for these deer. Next slide. So, next slide. Which product's gonna give you the best results? And you've got a couple of options. During the spring and summer period, during antler growth, when we got these fawns on the ground and we got those fawns nursing and obviously starting to get on protein pellets by the end of the summer, is the AntlerMax Deer 20 product. That's going to be our number one seller, the most popular product we have for that time of year across the country. And the reason it is it's going to have a few things in it that our Antler Advantage line does not have in it, which I'll talk about in a second. But basically, a couple things of importance is, number one, it's got the AntlerMax bypass protein technology in it. And what that is it's a process that we used to have a patent on, where our research has helped us determine what amino acids are critical to antler development. And we are able to help you get those amino acids into the bloodstream of that deer, where basically it bypasses the rumen, gets absorbed in that deer's small intestine, goes to the bloodstream, and then hopefully goes to antler development. So that's one big thing that's a difference that's in that feed that's going to help you. Another thing is the AntlerMax mineral technology. Our mineral that's in AntlerMax Deer 20 is derived from all of our years of liver research that we have gotten off of deer across the country for 20 plus years. It's kind of a proprietary mineral blend that we have determined by different plants. And what I mean by that is, you guys up there in Kansas, your mineral package is going to be designed for y'all's area out of that plant up there, where we went in and looked at Boone and Crockett scores of big deer, look at soils, and also looked at those deer, what they score at those big Boone and Crockett deer, where we are able to overlay a map to help us with soil deficiencies and things like that. So the feed y'all get up there in Kansas is way different than what we get in South Texas in regards to a mineral package. The third thing on that slide also is probably more important than the other two is the Climate Guard supplement. Climate Guard is something that we developed a couple of years ago and put it into the AntlerMax line of feeds. It's going to help you with heat stress and things like that, where we can get those deer coming to those feeders during the heat and in the high temperature during the day. So that way, those deer are eating multiple small meals over the course of the day instead of just primarily feeding during the evening and morning times and overnight. So it's really a neat supplement that we've added to that feed that's really showing great work out in the field. On the current slide is a second product we have called the Antler Advantage Deer 20. And what that product is primarily the product that's going to be fed from January through August again during antler growth, but it doesn't contain the things that Antler Max has in it. It doesn't have Climate Guard in it, does not have Antler Max technology in it, or that mineral package. But don't discount the feed either. It's a good feed. It's got a rumen support system supplement in it, and it's been raising some very big deer across the country. It just doesn't have a few things in it that Antler Max has, but it's a great product for those folks that wanted to save a few dollars over Antler Max. Next slide. You know, during the walk, go ahead, click the slide, Cassie. During the fall and winter, we recommend getting off the Antler Max Deer 20 and going over to the rut conditioner line of feeds. And basically what that product is there's an Antler Max and a Antler Advantage version, but it's going to help more focus on body conditioning, higher fat feed, different mineral package designed around reproduction and things like that. That's going to help us get those deer back in great body condition, you know, this time of year right now before the springtime hits and we start growing antlers again. So there's something to think about if you're feeding Antler Max Deer 20 during the fall and spring, or I'm sorry, the spring and summer, is to switch over to the rut conditioner in the fall and winter. Next slide. Probably one of the most important things I can stress on this call is we can only maximize the genetic potential of your deer. You know, there's no magic bean out there. There's no magic bean in our products either. What you got to remember is a good supplemental feeding program is only going to maximize the genetic potential of those deer. So if those deer on your property are only designed to be 150 class deer, I can't make them into 180 class deer. So just something you need to keep in mind as you're going into this and getting your program set up on your property. Next slide. Here's a customer up there in y'all's backyard that Bud shared with me that's raising some great deer on our products up there. So, you know, you can look anywhere. You can look on the internet or any of those places, or even follow us on Purina Wildlife on Facebook page. I mean, there's a lot of big deer out there across the country getting raised on Antler Max, and you know, it's a great product. We're constantly making updates to it to help y'all reap the benefits of our research that we do on our end to try to provide y'all the best product we can. So that's kind of going to wrap up the presentation today. Next slide has my info on it. What I'm going to encourage you guys to do is reach out to everyone there at Cleaver's and the store for more information on Antler Max or Antler Advantage, or if you want to give me a call or send me an email on some technical questions, I'd be glad to help you out as well. I mean, we're here to help you guys any way we can, and appreciate the partnership and really look forward to helping y'all kind of raise some big deer up there.
Scott, we've got a few questions that have come in, so you got a few minutes yet to answer those, I guess.
Go for it.
Yep. We've got some folks that the antlers are a big deal, but also are interested in meat, and will actually are hunting them for the meat. So is there anything that would be different that you would feed if you're just trying to get bigger, fatter deer?
Right. I would definitely save a few dollars and go with the Antler Advantage line, like that Antler Advantage Deer 20. It's going to help keep those deer very healthy. It's going to keep them in great body condition throughout the summer. So that is the perfect product for that scenario.
Okay. And a lot of people feed straight corn. Okay, and it's What are the advantages and disadvantages of the people that do that versus a good protein supplement like Antler Max?
Well, corn is not going to help you any in regards to raising antlers or raising deer with big antlers. One thing you got to remember, I mean, corn is kind of like candy. It attracts them in, but from a nutritional value, it's pretty much a mute deal. Versus a good pellet like Antler Max is going to have multiple sources of protein. It's going to have multiple vitamins and minerals in it. So it's more of a complete package where those deer are going to be able to maximize their genetic potential with a good product like that versus just whole corn.
Okay. And then the final question, how quick would someone that starts on an Antler Max program, how quick would they see results in their deer as far as changes?
Once you get your deer on a free choice program, what you're going to see first and foremost is you're going to see those young deer really looking good, because those young guys are the ones that are always going to go to the feeder. Okay, you might have a hard time getting those middle class or those middle class or those older bucks coming to a protein station because they don't know what it is. So those young deer are going to really start looking good. What I mean by that is you're going to have 2-year-olds that are going to look like 3-year-olds in regards to antler development. And then it kind of goes up from there. Every year that you've got that herd on a good supplemental feeding program, they're just going to get better. Those deer are going to increase in age class, and they're going to have better, bigger antlers every year as they get mature. But you're going to see results the first year, depending on what you can get coming to those feeders. If you get those middle-aged deer or those mature bucks coming to those feeders the entire antler growing season, and it's free choice, you'll see a boost in your antler qualities.
Okay. Why do you recommend starting in January with a feeding program?
Well, we recommend really all year long. And if you really look at the people out there that are raising the biggest deer in the country, they feed pellets year round. And the reason they do is, you got to remember, we're just now coming out of the rut breeding season all across the country. Well, those bucks are run down. They have lost a lot of body condition in those bucks. Well, the way a buck is designed is he's not going to work on antler development until he gets that body conditions and that weight put back on. So if we start now and have those pellets out now, you're going to help that buck recover that weight that he lost quicker, and he's going to start on antler development quicker as well. So it all goes back to just raising the biggest, healthiest deer we can. It's going to give you the best, antlers.
Okay. Thank you.
What do you think about how to use the best way to use the Purina deer blocks?
Deer blocks are great for, like, if you're going to attract deer. One of the issues with the deer blocks on raising the biggest deer you can is the deer cannot consume enough of those blocks to make a nutritional difference versus pellets. If they had blocks out or a feeder out, they're going to eat more pellets and get more in their system. Versus blocks, they can't grab enough off of it to make a nutritional difference. But at the end of the day, it's better than nothing, but it's also a great attraction as well.
So we also had a guy that his time he makes the round trip to his feeders, it's a 60-mile round trip once or twice a week. Is there anything he can do to kind of save a little bit of time? I mean, there's places where you can't get with an auger. You can't get there with the tractor. It's only with a UTV.
Yeah, he's going to have to go with a larger feeder capacity.
Okay. All righty. We'll go into a little bit about exclusive dog food here. We know everybody that's hunts deer has usually got a good dog around the house. And then if we got any more questions, we'll come back to you, Scott, and answer more questions. I'm going to turn this part over to Bud and Kyle and let them talk a little more about exclusive.
Okay, well, Ken, it's a time of year, Christmas, holidays. A lot of folks get the urge to have a puppy or kittens, and so they're bringing pets home. And so we thought it might be timely just to put a little bit on the end here about the Purina exclusive signature line of pet foods. and the importance of getting the correct diet for those younger animals. So those puppies don't have the digestive system developed yet that an adult dog does, so they have some different requirements. And you guys do handle here at Cleaver's a full line of our red flannel and exclusive puppy products. Those are available, and they are designed specifically for those younger dogs. Kyle, in addition to that, you have a program here for people that purchase your pet foods on a frequent basis. Would you like to explain that program to them?
We go through Purina and we sponsor a frequent purchasers program. It's a buy 8 get 1 free. You buy your 8 bags and you'll get the 9th one free. And we keep track of it with cards here in the store, and we get you that free bag. It doesn't seem like a lot, but over time, eight bags isn't really that much for a growing dog, and especially if you have more than one.
Okay.
So it turns out to be about $4 a bag when you get your free bag get back. So it is a good value to you, and you've got a quality product. The comfort care that's in the exclusive, and it's been trialed and everything, and it's been researched. And but you can tell us a little more about comfort care.
Well, it's got some fermentable fiber in there to keep their digestive system healthy. Some chicory root, an exclusive a yeast product, also keep their stomach stable and their stools firm. And then we also use some probiotics to kind of feed the bacteria and things that are in the rumen and keep those going in the digestive system, so that they can adequately digest the food and not have digestive upsets. So it's interesting. Not only does the digestive system supply the energy and the protein and the things like that, but there are a lot of bacteria and things in there that are in the digestive system, and about 70% of a dog's immune system is actually supplied and contained within the digestive part of their body. So it's kind of a healthy dog and is fed properly, I guess is a good way to put it.
So Kyle, explain a little bit what they do. They got multiple dogs, multiple ages. What's one of the exclusive lines that could help them feed and just have one dog food?
So we offer a all stages. It's a lamb and rice blend, and it's formulated to feed a puppy all the way through a senior dog.
So, and when we break down to, we have a senior dog feed. That's what my dogs are on. They're all seniors. That's what we have them on. Had some excellent results with them. We have large breed puppy and large breed adult. We have several people here at the store. If you're looking for people to come talk to, a person who's been feeding exclusive and what it's done for them, we've got a whole store full of people here that are feeding exclusive. Is there anything else guys like to talk about?
Well, 100% satisfaction guarantee on the pet foods, just like there are other Purina products. So tell folks that if they take it home and they feed their dog, and the neighbor's cat that comes over and steals out of the dog food bowl won't eat it, the possum won't eat it, or the dog won't eat it, whatever, that we have a guarantee that we'll refund their money on the product. So it is 100% satisfaction guarantee.
Got anything else, Kyle?
We also have a line that's the exclusive signature cat food for cat blend. It's another all stages as well.
And you'll definitely see a coat change. It'll be a shinier coat on your cat. It's pretty obvious after about 10-15 days of feeding it how the coat will shine. They'll act a little faster. Our kitten acts way too fast now on exclusive kitten or on cat. So you'll see a difference. It's really obvious. Anything else you guys got on that? Scott, do you have anything left? Anything to add to anything on the deer?
No, I'm good on my end.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you, Scott, for taking time today down there in Texas to talk with us up here in Kansas. We appreciate you, all your slides. they have your information. We can pass on. If anybody's got any questions, we can get a hold of Scott, get them questions to him. And we appreciate the time and effort, and thank you guys.
Appreciate it, everybody. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Scott.